Here they are, the ones you paid to see, the ones you've been waiting for. Get ready to wail. Oh, wait a minute, I don't think I can wail. I have a dolphin, will that work? Welcome back, Beach Boys fans. You might recall that last time we did a big, in-depth review of the Beach Boys concert LP. But there's one more important piece of that concert puzzle that we need to discuss. So today we'll be taking a look at the digital release, Live in Sacramento, 1964. This was predominantly the basis for what would eventually become the concert LP. So today, take a look-see at these songs, what the group did use and didn't use for this final LP. So in December of 2014, Beach Boys fans were gifted with a very fun digital release. I have a whole video on it. I highly recommend it, even for those of you who are Beach Boys fans not into digital stuff. I can't help but recommend Keep an Eye on Summer, which is a celebration of 1964. Now, the bulk of it is focused on Shutdown Volume 2 and All Summer Long. They're two big studio LPs for the year. But we also have some Christmas stuff. There's some early Beach Boys Today tracks on there. There's some Live at the BBC tapes. All kinds of odds and ends from 1964, most of which are very interesting. But there is one kind of bizarre omission, and that is the concert stuff. In fact, there's only one track that is tied into Beach Boys concert, or directly tied in anyway, and that is a live single mix of that album's closing track, Johnny Be Good. Now, as far as I know, Johnny Be Good was never actually released as a single, but it was mixed for such, and I'm sure there was at least talk of having singles to go with this album, as it did go all the way to #1, but that ultimately never materialized. But for the most part, concert stuff completely absent from this digital set, because that same day, in December of 2014, we received Live in Sacramento, and this is two concerts, two complete shows from August 1st, 1964 at the Sacramento Memorial Auditorium, and indeed these two shows were the basis for the concert album. Now, we've talked about quite a few other live digital sets on here. You might remember my scathing review of Live in Chicago 1965. Done a deep dive into the 2016 Live at University of Michigan release. And I did a giant deep dive into the Hawaii shows and the Wild Honey Tour. It's available on 2017's Live Sunshine. But now we're finally returning to the original live multiple show digital set in the case of Live in Sacramento. So let's go through and talk about what they kept and what they got rid of, what they used. And these are interesting because they're really authentic, unedited, unaltered recordings. You might remember a concert had quite a bit of doctoring and re-editing and flying songs in from other shows, notably the December 1963 show, and a lot of editing, a lot of remixing. This is an actual, authentic live 1964 document with little to no editing or additional material going into it. So the track list for each show is basically the same. The order is jumbled around a little bit. We'll talk about that later. But for show #1, the set was Little Honda, Papa Oo Mau Mau, The Little Old Lady from Pasadena, Hushaby, Hawaii, Let's Go Trippin', The Wanderer, Surfer Girl, Monster Mash, Be True to Your School, Graduation Day, Surfin' USA, Don't Back Down, Don't Worry Baby, Wendy, I Get Around, and Fun, Fun, Fun. So a pretty solid list of fan favorite, covers that were popular with teenagers, and also Beach Boys hits, and a few album cuts in there too, just to kind of pad things out a little bit. So already you might note that several of the recordings on the concert LP were not taken from these shows, notably Long Tall Texan, Little Deuce Coupe, Johnny Be Good, and In My Room. Those were not even done at the August 1964 show. Alright, so let's go ahead and jump in. There's a very short intro for Little Honda, not a lot of build-up for the group. However, the audience is definitely into it. They're yelling and screaming almost immediately as the group jumps into Papa Oo Mau Mau and The Little Old Lady from Pasadena, both big fan favorites, both of which we'll see on the concert LP. The group does Hushaby. The girls love Brian's falsetto vocals on Hushaby. Definitely a lot of fun there. Then we jump into Hawaii. Hawaii, of course, was an album cut, and indeed it's probably most popular amongst Beach Boys fans as a live staple, not as, a single or anything like that. Mike talks about them being there in December of 1963 and recording an album. He says they're also recording today, and from the way Mike talks, the idea was to combine the 3 shows into one live album, which indeed would eventually be done. So 1 from December, 2 from August, kind of merged together to make one live document there. There was some additional studio stuff too, of course, but we can tell already the group and the people in charge knew that the December show wasn't going to cut it, so these shows were going to be able to kind of fill it out and balance it out. And Mike's very candid about that, and say, hey, watch for the big live album. They do their instrumental, Let's Go Trippin'. For The Wanderer, Dennis changes the lyrics around, and as I said in my concert video, this is not present on the concert LP, so they either had Denny redo the vocals in studio or they used a different take of the song from somewhere else. He doesn't mess up so much as he does just kind of replace words, switch things around. We'll talk about mess-ups here in a little bit. We have a version of Surfer Girl, which is marketed as their first slow song by the group, and the crowd absolutely goes crazy. We saw this exact take of Surfer Girl on the bonus disc of the Good Vibrations set. They keep a lot of the banter and things like that. These few concert outtakes that were released ahead of time, pretty authentic documents overall to how it would have been to see the group in concert. They didn't have a lot of the studio editing that the concert LP did. The group does the Monster Mash. Brian, of course, introducing Mike as Boris Karloff, a different intro than what's on the concert LP. Mike, of course, also changes some of the lyrics to make the song more Beach Boys focused. So he says, Dracula and his little baby boy. Instead of the Crypt Kicker 5, it's the Beach Boy 5, that kind of thing. And the crowd seems to like that. The kids really enjoy it. And at the end of the show, there's a bit of a commotion in the audience. The idea, I guess, is maybe that somebody fell, because someone sounds like Brian keeps asking, is she alright? Is she okay? So maybe some girl was trying to climb on stage and fell down or something. I don't know. Kind of different there. We have their kind of school medley. We have Be True to Your School first. Mike opens it with some banter about Brian Wilson. Oh, big bad Brian Wilson can throw a football so far, and he's my cousin and I'm his cousin, and this and that. You can kind of sense there's a playful rivalry between Mike and Brian, and they were building that up for the audience. That take, of course, was on that disc I just showed you for the Good Vibrations set. And they do Graduation Day. This one is a much shorter intro than the version we'd hear on the Beach Boys concert LP. Most of it's Mike joking about Dennis has to go to hair school. He can't go to actual school like the rest of us, that kind of thing. The 4 freshman connection is not emphasized in this very much. We have one more take that popped up on that Good Vibrations box set CD. That was their take of Surfin' USA, which Mike says was a #1 hit in Sacramento. And thanks all the kids for tuning in and listening and enjoying that song. The group does Don't Back Down, and this is one of the few that doesn't sound great. I mean, this is an interesting document because the group is very young and just starting out, so you kind of expect some mistakes and some weird stylistic choices. You might recall that for the 2015 set, the 1965 concert, this has so many mistakes it's distracting, and it really takes me out of the performance. There aren't as many here, but I will say that Don't Back Down is pretty unsteady. The group doesn't sound all that confident playing it, and it's a very rough take. There was a review online that said this particular digital album sounds more like the Ramones than the Beach Boys as we know it, and there is truth to that. They go pretty hard. It's very raw, almost like a garage band sound. But Don't Back Down is one of the few songs I think that doesn't quite stick the landing. They follow that up with Don't Worry Baby. There's a couple small errors in the lyrics, that kind of thing. You can tell Brian was really struggling to play this song live, which I get. I don't doubt Don't Worry Baby is a very difficult song to sing and play, and maybe one they could have rehearsed a tad bit more before they started doing it and adding it to the live set. They do Wendy, and they do I Get Around. Mike Love does a big spiel about being #1 in the nation, that kind of thing. And again, thanks all the kids for buying that record, tuning into their radios, all that sort of thing. I Get Around, a little bit ragged, but for the most part, a fairly solid version, especially for a song that was still relatively new. Famously, of course, the version on Beach Boys concert is not taken from either of these Sacramento shows. It's believed to be a studio take of some kind, with additional mixing and some vocals added in to make it seem like a live performance, even though it probably wouldn't be. In the big encore, we have Fun, Fun, Fun. I should note that the banter for I Get Around and for the finale of the concert is reused on the concert LP, but not the actual music tracks. So, it's kind of, Fun, Fun, Fun is kind of rushed. And, there's talk about, oh, hey, they'll be back later today, don't you wish you had a ticket for show number 2, all that kind of stuff. But I like the Fun, Fun, Fun's the encore, that even this early on in their career, they already knew that would be the song that'd be a good, solid closer. So it shows kind of that they knew that from the very beginning, I would say. And the crowd, of course, loves Fun, Fun, Fun. Another song that was heavily edited and altered for the concert LP. So, a pretty fun set of live tracks. Nothing that is going to change your life as a Beach Boys fan, but definitely a great live document. Now the second show, it should be noted, has again the same songs, but the order is jumbled in a few places. For example, the Monster Mash and Surfer Girl, they're flipped around. Fun, Fun, Fun is moved to the second song of the show, while Papa Ooh Mau Mau was moved to the encore, so those two kind of traded places. Just different things, little things, but they still do the same songs overall, and not, too many big changes there. So this show has a much bigger intro, particularly with someone named Gus the Gopher, who I'm assuming is some kind of Sacramento, California DJ, or he was obviously some kind of media figure that the kids there would have known. And Gus, of course, was drafted. He has to go report for his, training and whatever else very soon, so he wants to say goodbye to all the teenagers. They come out, the announcer jokes, "Happy Reveille, Gus," and then he is presumably leaving them for a while to go do his tour of duty. And then, of course, there's a build-up to now, the ones you've been waiting to see. The joke about the whale I did in the intro of this video is a callback to the intro to the second show. Huge build-up for the Beach Boys, but then the sound goes out. And indeed, the first about 3 songs, most of Little Honda, most of Fun, 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 and most of Little Old Lady from Pasadena, Mike's microphone is on the fritz, and it's not working. And so we get what I guess you would say be like live instrumental, or live instrumental with backing vocal takes of Little Honda and Little Old Lady from Pasadena. It's kind of interesting to hear them, and you can see just how professional the group was with their playing. And they just keep going, too, and no doubt some technician was frantically trying to change up Mike's recording stuff there so we could actually hear his vocals. But it's kind of neat, and they do kind of come in and go out a few times, so whatever it was, they were having trouble fixing it, but they kind of get it and kind of lose it. It's interesting, and I like it, and it gives it some personality. It's not a mistake that's so drastic or is so disconcerting it actually takes me out. I think it's actually pretty good, not good, but certainly interesting to have these little mistakes. And the group jumps back in for Hushabye and Hawaii. The banter for Let's Go Trippin' and The Wanderer from the second show were used on Beach Boys concert. Probably the same take of Let's Go Trippin'. The Wanderer, in this one, Denny actually feels like he messes up. There are places where he pauses and the band keeps going, but he's not singing. In the last song, it seems like he just swapped a few words around, maybe just to mess with everybody. But here, Dennis actually kind of freezes in a couple places. Nevertheless, the girls love Dennis, so they keep cheering anyway. And I guess it really doesn't matter in the long run. Something I meant to talk about in the last video and forgot to was that The Wanderer and Johnny Be Good were never done by the Beach Boys in studio, at least not versions that we have access to as fans. But the live takes from the Beach Boys concert album were indeed used, and they're covered by the Beach Boys CD from 2006, and I have a whole video on that release. So, different takes from the concert album, they've popped up in unusual places, and that would be one of them, I'd say. So for Wendy, Mike takes a moment to talk about the All Summer Long album, and here's a reel-to-reel concert and All Summer Long as a double feature. And the thing is, you can kind of tell that they were asked to push the All Summer Long album, maybe to make sure the Beach Boys would still be relevant in the face of the British invasion. Because it's not the first time this show when Mike's like, "Oh, hey, do you like this song? It happens to be on our new album called All Summer Long. Make sure you buy that, try it out." So it's kind of surprising to see here. Where there's some coughing at the beginning of Wendy, which I don't know if that was intentional or not, but you might remember with the single mixing of Wendy, or the album mixing of Wendy. Supposedly there are coughs in some versions and not in others, and that kind of thing, and that's a whole Beach Boys debate for another day. And Wendy also, they kind of flubbed the start of it. You can tell they're having difficulty getting it going. Again, like Don't Worry Baby, Wendy's maybe a little more difficult to do live. I get that, but it's not the best take of the song the group ever did. Followed up with, of course, the Monster Mash. Again, different intro by Brian for the concert album. Again, Mike Love changes the lyrics and goes crazy, but he does not really commit to the Boris Karloff impression the way that Bobby Pickett did in the original. When Surfer Girl comes up, Mike talks about how this is being recorded, this show will be a live album, make sure you listen to it, that kind of thing. So more of letting the audience know that, yeah, all these Sacramento shows will someday be live, or on a live concert album, I should say. They do Be True to Your School, again, Mike playing up a rivalry between him and Brian, joking about football, things like that. The banter that was used in show 2 was reused for Graduation Day on the LP. Might even be the same take of the song. And of course the crowd loves it when Dennis yells, "Day!" at the end of the song, that kind of thing. So Graduation Day followed by Surfin' USA and Don't Back Down. Don't Back Down is also tied in with a promotion for the All Summer Long LP with Mike Love saying, "Yeah, I'll be on there, make sure you check it out." They don't do a whole lot better with than they did in the first time around, really. Same sort of goes for Don't Worry Baby, which follows it up. Interestingly, this take was used on the concert Live in London 2 first CD. You know I don't usually swear on this channel, but in the past I've had to whenever I quote Mike Love. And Mike Love starts Don't Worry Baby by telling the audience, "Oh, you're bitchin' as usual." Bitchin' as in cool, I'm sure, not as in complaining, but kind of an interesting thing to say, but whatever, it's Mike Love. And then, of course, I Get Around comes on after that, and Mike Love talks about being #1 in the nation. He doesn't do quite as much of a spiel, but there's still a little bit there. And then Papa Ooh Mau Mau actually ends the show, and it runs right to the end of the tape. There's no like closing banter or anything like that. So I'm assuming Papa Ooh Mau Mau was the last part of the show there. And the audience really likes Papa Ooh Mau Mau. No doubt they associated it more with the Ribbingtons than they did with the Beach Boys, but hey, it's a fun crowd pleaser song, that kind of thing. And it won't really be that long before it's relegated to the end of Barbara Ann in the live set. And we have 2 bonus rehearsal tracks. You might remember on some of these, especially the ones that are just like 2 shows. We see occasional rehearsals. There's 4 of them on Live in Chicago. We get a rehearsal of Little Honda, which is much slower and kind of mellower than you'd expect Little Honda to be. There's also extra falsetto parts throughout the song. It's kind of interesting. I think they were experimenting with how they wanted to do it live, maybe considering changing up a little bit for the live set. And then Papa Ooh Mau Mau, we have a rehearsal tape of that. Interestingly, in both of the actual show takes of Papa Ooh Mau Mau, they start with this little routine like, "Where is it? Oh, it's right there, baby." And I can't tell who's talking to who or what they're talking about, but they also rehearse that little thing for this rehearsal of Papa Ooh Mau Mau. So I'm assuming that actually was some kind of staged comedy bit that went with it there. And they do a pretty good job on Papa Ooh Mau Mau. It's kind of gritty, kind of rough, and I like that. I think it suits it, and it's kind of a unique take on the song. I wish they'd done more with that in the actual live performance. And that wraps up the 2014 digital set, Live in Sacramento, 1964. So pretty interesting stuff overall. I enjoyed this one a lot more than Live in Chicago. If you're looking for a document of early Beach Boys work, probably one of the best places to look. Certainly a little more authentic than the actual concert album, but that has the advantage of being released on LP, of course, as well as multiple other formats. It gives it that kind of more, I guess, period authenticity. But if you were doing some kind of comparison of Beach Boys live material throughout the years, this would be the way to go. Yeah, there are some mistakes, a few flubs, that kind of thing, but this is an instance where they give character to the performance and kind of the rough, Ramones-like, teenage energy that you see here really helps to make this set interesting and fun. And that wraps up our Beach Boys Concert Odyssey. Tune in the future for more Beach Boys stuff, as well as some other things coming up. We have some Three Stooges and Avengers things on the horizon. Hope to see you there for those. Please comment your thoughts on the Beach Boys live set below. We'll see you next time. Go out there and catch a wave.